Hello, everyone, and welcome to Musing, music for the adventurous listener on CJSW 90.9 FM in Calgary. I'm your host, Janna Sailor. Today I am in conversation with composer-performer Carmen Braden. As you will hear, Carmen is one of the most versatile and genre-defying musicians I have ever encountered. Carmen Braden was the winner of the 2019 and 2020 Western Canadian Music Awards for Classical Composer of the Year and has been hailed by critics as a talented, bold musician. As a result, her music has been nominated for East Coast Music Awards and Juno Classical Album of the Year. Carmen is based in her hometown of Yellowknife, Northwest Territories.
My grief and your grief hung out together. Your grief gave my bottle of wine. My grief wish that it was whiskey.
The weather never is what it needs to be. There's always more time for our grief to meet. But a bottle of wine will never be a bottle of whiskey.
Carmen, so great to be in conversation. I'm so thrilled to have you as my guest today on Musing.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I touched on it briefly in the intro. You are such a multifaceted musician. You literally do all the things. You are, first of all, a composer. You are a singer-songwriter, a performer. You front bands. You produce projects. Is there anything else that I missed in that list?
I've got like a small family.
Oh, yes, that's right. The life aspect.
And I've started to go to the gym. Those things take energy and time and creativity, and they're like a steady part of my life right now. So I'll throw those in.
Yeah, absolutely. No, part of being a well-rounded human. So I ask all of my guests a similar question, but it perhaps is even more applicable to you. How do you describe yourself and your creative output?
I generally just call myself a musician, and it's really these streams of writing and collaboration and work that gets in front of people's bodies on the stage or in their ears through recordings. And then, compositions in the line of contemporary classical or just the classical tradition, where it's works that are written down on a piece of paper and then I can give them to somebody else and they can exist without me there. So I suppose I should figure out a good way to describe it, where it's like work that doesn't need me there.
That's a really interesting way to describe it. I've never heard a composer say that you can exist without me being there.
Yeah, and like my songs can as well, but those ones are also more in the tradition of singer-songwriter works, where either I perform them or they're recorded and are in more kind of recording captured medium with bands and synthesizers and drums and things like that. So sometimes those two areas blur in some of my work, but other times they're very like firmly entrenched in one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I would love it if somebody started to cover my singer-songwriter songs, but that definitely doesn't happen as often as, say, a string quartet playing my string quartet again without me there, because I don't play strings.
Right. Can we dive into your singer-songwriter aspect a little bit more? Yeah. If I understood it correctly, you have a brand new album dedicated to your songs that is just coming out or in the works?
Yeah, it came out in December. So, gosh, it'll be 6 months old next month.
Oh, wow. 6-month-old.
Yeah. It's just learning to sit up and eat by itself.
Yeah. I love that. So tell me more about the inspiration for it and the content that people can look for.
Yeah, so this one is a studio album, I think 9 songs on it that myself and producer and collaborator Mark Adam, who's been with me through so much of my output over the last 10 to 15 years, we did this together, and it is probably my strongest output of this kind of work, of things in a singer-songwriter vein, where the songs themselves, they've been kind of crafted and inspired over different lengths of time. Some of them are very new, some of them are old, some of them kind of grew out of my previous album called Seed Songs, and so some of them are arrangements or adaptations of older songs, and it was years of work put into this one and over many geographies with different players adding to it. And for me is the deepest and strongest of my singer-songwriter output. But I will also say, like most of my other work in this vein, it is not extremely unified, as in it doesn't all sound like one genre, for example. Like it's not a country album, and it's not just a folk roots album, and it's not a jazz-inspired album. So while fun in the creation and the listening, I think, sometimes makes it difficult in terms of the describing of it or the advertising in a more kind of industry nuts and bolts approach.
We like the categories, don't we?
We do. So like once in a while the categories are great. And in this case, its own genre that you might attribute it to. While when you're in the studio, it's quite exhilarating and there's very little boundaries. When we've worked to tie these all together into a cohesive album, I think we've done a really great job, but I'm also excited to try something in the future where I have the exact same instrumentation for every song, or I'm going in it with a genre, essentially a history of music I'm drawing on and digging in for each song. If I'm doing another album of this kind of work where it's like a more traditional album of 8 to 12 tunes in this kind of singer-songwriter pop length, this is, I think, what I would do next.
Oh, this brings me back to a time.
Dark night,
Unsure touches in the dark, walking home alone.
not ready.
For what it could be, there was a way.
I knew
I could go. There was a path laid out for me by someone else that I didn't know. the gate, pardoning what I'd already seen.
Don't pass.
Too quickly they seem to say,
And then bang.
to stay or just to pause for longer than I thought was safe. There was a way the first steps would lead, but past that it wasn't up to me. Eyes half there, they almost meet and clear the way to my home street.
Early on, when you were talking about this album, you mentioned that this was your strongest album. And I wonder what, as an outsider looking in, how do you gauge your strengths and how do you gauge that this was a higher standard for yourself than your others? Because, like I said, as a listener listening in, we would probably just enjoy them all equally. But for yourself, this was a step up, it seems.
Yeah, it's a great question. And this is not to knock any of my other work. It might also be that kind of honeymoon phase of the most recent work you do.
Right.
You're in love with the most for a while until you do something new. And then that one's the most dear to your heart, or you take the most pride in, or you feel the most confident about. If I look back at my first album I released, 2017, I was a very different person then. And I was writing very differently. And I would not write in the same way now. So it's like
Right.
looking at a picture of yourself from 10 or 15 years ago, and you're like, that haircut. I would never do that now. Or like, why did I
Right.
make that choice now? And
Those
so-
eyebrows.
Yeah, exactly. So those kinds of like, reflections back probably have an impact on it. But I think I can also feel the kind of patience that went into this, the going over things and editing it and making it as strong as we could, and not just accepting it because of a deadline, and giving it that space to really grow its bark and its trees and its leaves and be strong in all those parts.
Right.
And I'll also credit that to the things I've learned over the years of bringing people into the projects who are better than me at different things. And they tell me when it's not strong. Like going back to my producer, Mark, who's a drummer by instrument and has produced multiple albums and worked with many different people in classical, jazz, pop, rock genres, like being able to lean on his wisdom.
Right.
And after the rapport we've built over so long. And I think what also changed in this one was both allowing collaborations and creativity that didn't come from me to be a part of this song. But then also that happened more in this one than any other album, where Mark's own creative work in terms of the arrangements, the harmonies, the melodies, we were working and going back and forth more on this one than any other one. And he's actually got an original track on the album.
Oh, how cool.
Of his own that we did and that I sing on and he sings on. So that kind of maturity of people in the room, trust, that for me, it feels the strongest out of any of the other other albums that I've done. And interestingly, like, this is a singer-songwriter album. I also have a album which is almost exclusively instrumental chamber music works. And that was an interesting one because some of that music was really new and not stage tested, for example, or hadn't been edited past a premiere. And others were years and years old and had multiple performances. And so the players on that did a deadly job. But as a composer sitting in the room, being able to either wanting to change things that, again, maybe I wouldn't have done when I wrote that piece, or make compositional changes to things because of an uncertainty of something in that moment, those kind of hesitations and decision-making processes of recording that album was a very different kind of stress. I say stress in a good way, a different challenge.
Right.
But also, I could always feel that devil on the shoulder in the room of self-doubt as a composer who's always looking back at old works and thinking, what could I do differently now to make it better? And should I? Or is it just like a stamp in time and I just leave it alone? The existential composer question.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say. Can we talk a bit more about your more traditional composition life? Were you speaking about Ravens when you were mentioning your chamber music album?
No, that Ravens was my first one,
Okay.
which has a kind of combination of singer-songwriter and instrumental works, or there's one song on there that I would consider an art song, for example. My instrumental album is called Songs of the Invisible Summer Stars,
Right.
and that was on Center Discs, the Canadian Music Center's label. And yeah, that one was released before the pandemic.
A lifetime ago, almost.
Yeah, it feels like it. Yeah, I'm literally thinking to the recording process when my daughter, who was with me at the time, she took some of her first steps when we were doing the recording time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I brought her to Nova Scotia, and my mom came along to help look after her. And so I would go to a session and then duck out to breastfeed and then come back in, and she would, like, walk on fingers around the stage and get in the way and try to grab, like, Norm Adams' cello. And then we'd send her out and we'd do some more work while she
And
had
carry
a nap.
on, yeah.
Yeah.
As you do.
As
The
you do.
intersections of life and creativity. Yeah.
Yeah, wouldn't trade it for the world.
Absolutely. That's really precious. I love that.
I have a daughter, I have a sister. Whenever I see them, feels like a mirror. I see them hurting, I stand beside them. Part of me. They always see me, everything's open. We don't understand, but we don't need to. It feels unstable, have to stop pushing, calm down. We work to failure, it's the only way we'll get better. But in that moment, it feels like failure. She won't know, and I won't say. We must go
me about your more traditional composition world that you also inhabit. That's writing string quartets and things. And how do these aspects of your creative output kind of complement one another when looking from the outside in, singer-songwriter and contemporary classical composer? Very different things.
Yeah, they are. And it's taken me quite a while to just reconcile the fact that I'm never going to give up either of these, I think. And I feel pretty strongly that it's not a weakness of my process. It's a bit of a complication, to be sure, but both sides of these have kind of proven kind of things that I can succeed in and find work in, and things that I still love doing both kind of ways. But I did make a pretty deliberate choice to go pretty deep and hard on kind of establishing myself as a composer, studying, seeking out teachers, looking for collaborators in that world for a good chunk of what I would consider my career now. And it's been at the fore of what fills my days, what fills my bank account, and what I would say is the thing that I'm more say well known for in different parts of the Canadian music world. But I can definitely. So, do you want to talk more about what I actually write about?
Sure, might as well. We can talk about whatever you want to talk about. It's all about you.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to just go over the journey of that.
I would love that.
If I back up to when I was in the earliest part of when I was creating music, like musical creation, that was in my teens when I was writing songs. I definitely wasn't composing sonatas at age 14. I was writing like teenage hormone songs about heartbreaks or crushes. I didn't have heartbreaks because I didn't date anyone for a long time because I was super shy and introverted as a kid. But I like crushes and like the whole things like, oh, I'm young. Where do I belong? I hate my hometown. I love my hometown. I'm so frustrated with life and I want peace in the world. All those things that teenagers write about. I wrote songs like that. One of them ended up on my Ravens album.
I love it.
Like 15 years later. And then I decided to go on to different kinds of schooling where I learned about jazz. I met people from many different countries, and I was learning about music from different cultures. And I was also exposed to, say, deeper compositional ideas or analysis or composers from the canon, kind of in my later teens. So this was not something that was really a strong part of my life other than I took piano lessons for a long time. So I knew some really moderate level piano repertoire, and I sang in choirs in high school and things like that. And then Debussy was like my gateway drug composer. And I was learning about Debussy at the same time that I was learning about jazz piano and jazz harmony. And those two are flip sides of the same harmonic coin, at least. And I was like, this is the coolest. And Debussy was also so influenced by nature and the environment in his writing, which also, I think, spoke to a deep part of me. And then if I kind of fast forward over, decided like taking years off, but then deciding to go back to school and then for composition, and then learning through that at Acadia about music and the environment in a much deeper way, and music and technology, and then how those all kind of intersected, and then found a big kind of peak in when I went back for my master's after taking even more years off, where I was combining ideas and sounds and approaches to environment and stage music. And so writing about the sound and the concept of ice in music, of ravens in music, of bedrock in music, of fire and forest fire in music. So it was very much connected to my subarctic life. So through that first part of my career, I used what was around me in my environment in the subarctic, in Yellowknife, to source the inspirations for that first core part of my output. And it's interesting looking back on it. I really deliberately avoided the human in that. And I think I know why right now. But ask me in 10 years and I'll probably have changed my mind.
Got it.
I remember learning about different music that people had written about northern themes and being, I guess, surprised or a little confused. And I would often feel slighted in a way that there was sometimes these kind of more overarching tropes or stereotypes of Northness that were put on people's experiences or their own perspectives on concepts of North or the idea of North or an experience they had as a visitor, because there's just not a lot of people from extreme northern parts of the world who have traditionally done kind of concert works. So I didn't have a lot of role models here. So what I did was quite a deliberate pushback to that, and the specificity that I chose my topics of, or that I did to dive into these things, was at sometimes the cellular level of what happens in the subarctic environment, or from a deeper lived perspective, or something over the whole season, as opposed to just like the Lake Ice Symphony. No, let's drill deeper and explore all of the different parts of this really rich and subtle part of the world that is full of life and is not barren. It is vast, but it also has so much richness to it that I think I wanted to pay an homage to and an honoring to. But again, like there was no human involved for the longest time. Even when I was recording sounds, I would bring a little field recorder with me everywhere. I had a hydrophone, which is like an underwater microphone, and I would listen to different things that way. Anytime there was like human sounds, I'd be like, stupid boat motor, or hey, like there's a dog walking or somebody walking over there. I got to wait till they're gone. And I was quite exclusive in that. The human was not in that, and I wanted to kind of make that spotlight shine. But I think I was also probably a little afraid of engaging with humans, because humans are complicated and messy and emotional. So I just avoided that for different reasons. But now, holy smokes, now it's a little different. Now it's more the human in everything. And I could definitely point to moving through my 30s, and this is my 40th year on the planet now.
Well done. Mine too.
And then having kids and a long-term relationship, and that side of my life is now what I see every day, up close and personal, and literally was inside my body. And so that has now changed my daily life and my focus, and it's also influenced the work that I do now. So a lot of the things that I've been putting out over the last, how old is my daughter now? 7. She just turned 7. 7 to 8 years has been about that side of things. And so like the involving kind of ideas of play or repetition or the female body, those have been more of a focus. But interestingly, if I think about the stuff that I drew on, like the ideas of, say, improvisation or variation or repetition of what I was looking at in natural things versus human or childlike things, there's so much overlap. Like something as simple as waves on a shore. It's repetitive, but you can't really tap your foot on it. So there's this kind of natural rhythm of things that I would see in the world and try to recreate in a musical way, whether it was, say, through aleatoric ideas, like chance ideas, or rhythmic variation of feathered beams, or no bar lines, or no stems, or things that were more up to the performer to choose. So I would have to give up some level of control or expectation. And then thinking about kids as they're learning things, they're endlessly repeating them, but always trying different little things, and it's always never the same. Right now I'm listening to so much Taylor Swift in literally the last week and a half, and they just want to listen to it again and again. But if I hear them singing it, they're never singing it the same way twice. They're still trying things every time that's different. So that is an interesting kind of thing that is definitely carried through in my writing. You can literally see it on the page and in how I've approached the topics of, say, childhood or something in the environment.
I love that. That's a really beautiful evolution. And for folks that, are perhaps not familiar with your work, that the North is so intrinsically linked with your output and your sound and your inspiration. I think that'll always be embedded in your work as an outsider listening in. I think that's something that just comes through so clearly and so beautifully.
No matter how many times you look away, how many times you look away, how many times you look away, it'll still be there. push and pull and make me sweat, leaving grooves in the cement, make me forget, make me forget. Reach out your hands, take your troubles for a dance. Reach out your hands, take your troubles for a dance. Gonna spin so fast, so hard, so wide that you'll lift up into the sky. Spin so fast, so hard that you'll let go of troubles hold on your mind. Spin so high, so hard, so fast that you won't come down in the same place that you left. No matter how many times you look away, how many times you look away, how many times you look away, it'll still be there, still be there. Reach out your hands, take your troubles for a dance. Reach out your hands, take your troubles for a dance. Reach out your hands, take your troubles for a dance.
What are some of the gifts and challenges with creating in such a remote and possibly isolated region? But you've made this your life work and you're evidently thriving in it. But yeah, can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, happy to. It's definitely a mixed blessing. There's things about it that I love and wouldn't give up. And so if I want to put those front and center, it would be that the community that is here, and I want to say would be a similar situation in many places that would call themselves remote or rural.
Mhm.
It's very a tight-knit town in that people are ready to support each other at the drop of a hat. And I know these places exist in bigger cities, and that's just more neighborhood-centric or culturally diaspora-centric. But my hometown of Yellowknife has, since I've been here, been very open to new people coming here with new ideas and just being excited about things that are happening and being ready for it. The fact that there is not a 3 to 4 million person population here to either compete with or try to find your way into these existing networks and things like that. I guess I had the blessing and the curse of not having many role models in my work here, not that many other organizations doing work like this or even more permanent ensembles. And so it allows a kind of freedom to decide what do you want to do, and you find your small number of people to do it with, and then you can just do it, and then the community kind of rises with you and supports you.
Mm-hmm.
This has been my experience. I know I'm not alone in that. And so there's this beautiful sense of kind of freedom and possibility, but on the other hand, it can be a little lonely because you don't have that many colleagues or role models that are maybe following you up who are the next generation. And there's a hardness to the work, not in terms of like brutalness, but just it's harder work because sometimes you're breaking ground, and breaking ground is hard work.
Yeah.
But those two things exist whenever things are not as rooted or have as much of a history as Southern Canada, which is in this context of, say, classical music that has this European tradition, has several hundred years of history to draw on, or several strong decades of work. If you think about how the Canadian shift of really promoting CanCon from the 50s onwards was such a thing, that didn't exist here until, say, the last 20 years. Like music makers here, incredible music makers of all different kinds, from a lot of different backgrounds. If I was going to point listeners who were interested in this to something called Musicians of the Midnight Sun, that somebody very dear to me, my uncle, Pat Braden, who's been a longtime musician here and a big inspiration for me, has built. It's this beautiful archive of musicians from the, I want to say like 60s, 70s, 80s, a lot of them indigenous, who were making music up here. They were playing in bands, they were writing original music, they were doing covers of Elvis Presley, country music, rock music, blues, fiddle, original music, music in indigenous languages. That has existed here in the kind of contemporary, commercialized way or urban way for decades. But in terms of, say, other classical output, we haven't had that many years of it.
Right. It's a relatively new art form or approach to art.
Which is fun. I'm excited to see where this goes now that kind of different technologies exist for people to be writing these kinds of music or music that kind of touches on it. So it has this very contemporary feel, but there's also this real willingness to respect these traditions, these languages, these ideas. Ensembles like Pilksik, which is a throat singing duo originally from Yellowknife. They're touring Australia right now, but they've done things where they're taking this very deep-rooted cultural practice in a very 21st century way that is surprising me every time they do something. To have people like that as my colleagues in creators, I find really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're creating those new pathways for those that follow, and that's never an easy role, but such a vital one.
I think there's people that I've looked to who have been my trailblazers, and people who I'm probably working with right now who are doing that for me, and I don't even know it. And I think it would be probably one of the biggest honors of my life if I can get to a stage of my career where I can look back and see how I've been a part of the community here that's widened the circle so that more people are making the music they want and getting it heard. Oh, got me all teary.
Oh, so much admiration and gratitude for what you do up there. It's truly so inspiring and just wonderful to watch.
All the servants walking, flocking, stalking, running, thoughtless to the lowest bar. All the children hoping, doping while we're groping, numbing tears and closing doors. Failing love and failing, all and failing, falling, blaming, we're all so sure. This is not the way we thought we'd go, we're down here screaming on the floor. I won't cry. Don't know why. Run, bone dry. I don't cry. Funny how the biggest mouths have trouble feeding little mouths that just need more. And all the ice and whales and tails and fails will be forgotten, was it for sure? So I am writing about fighting mighty people who think that the only score is marked by all the votes they got, while we cannot reach the shore. I a dozen different ways.
You just finished a tour. What's next for you creatively?
Oh, I have a couple commissions that are due, and so I'm trying to get these ones done. And there've been challenges for me in different ways. And then I've been doing a lot of work for theater lately, which has been very satisfying. So this is kind of music for theater, either in a sound design capacity, so that'd be like the sounds that play through speakers in a play, whether it's like kind of ambience or a specific sound cue, like the owl hoots off stage, and you would hear a sound of an owl hooting or something.
What brings the action to life?
Yeah, it helps just create these worlds and tell stories. And so much of what I've done has been sourced in words and text, for me, lyrics. So it's been really cool to see these beautiful theatrical works, some of which are very intense in their themes and what they touch on, and I'll be a part of bringing those to life. And it's a very humbling thing, because in things like stage works, whether it's a work for choir or a solo violin or a chamber orchestra or something, the music is front and center. There's really nothing going on. Composers have this awkwardly vaulted role where they're always looked to as the answers, whereas in a theater, side note, we sometimes just don't have the answers. We don't even know what's going on. But it's like film also. You're one part of many musics that would be going on. To quote one of my most influential teachers, my supervisor, Alan Bell, whenever I worked with dance, he'd be like, how many musics are going on, Carmen? What's going on in the dance and the actual music? Because they're all adding to it. And it's like you have to find the balance, and you have to see where do you fit in to make this complete work happen as successfully as possible. So it can be very humbling, because once in a while I'll build stuff that's like super cool sound, and the director's nope, and you got to let it go.
But musically, that's very satisfying, but it's not what the action called for, or something exactly, or according to their vision.
Yeah, it's very educating for me too, because this is something that I have to have more patience on and see what actually is going to serve it, instead of just being very like blinders on to other things except the music. And then when it does work, like holy smokes, it's magic. It's literal magic when something in theater works perfectly. It really does transport you to a different place for that moment.
Yeah,
I found it like breathtaking when it works.
Yeah, absolutely, and engages all the senses in so many ways.
Yeah, and you're always live in the room. I watch videos on my laptop computer at home because we don't have a TV, and this is how I experience things like film. But when you're in the room with these humans, and their words are literally shaking the air to your ears, and you see their bodies move, and you can picture yourself in their space because you're in there. You are in their space. You're just hovering on the edge. That has an excitement that I think you don't even find in music.
That's true. Yeah, beautiful. I love that.
Yeah, I just realized that too. That's a kind of a cool thing. Like when you're at a concert, you might know what's going on. You might know the tune, whether it's a classical tune or a song from a songwriter. It likely has something you can tap your foot to or feel where it's going. And there's it's not that there's not a lot to focus on, but there's musicians on stage making sound. And you can look at them, and they're doing different things. You can watch them move their instruments, and their music comes alive in your brain and in your ears. But when you're watching theater, yeah, you're in their space so heavily, and there's so many things going on to guide you through it, whether it's the lighting or the set or the blocking, something as simple as like, where do they move on stage and how does that give power to a scene, and how does that draw your attention and have a literal physical impact on you? Does it draw you in and bring you to the front of your seat, or do you move back because something's just been so big that you have to give space? It's this weird interactive thing to have theater happen. And then what I've learned from music is that it's not just something like bringing the atmosphere to life, but it can be a real storytelling feature.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been grateful for the directors that I've worked with. One in particular, Renata Arluk, an Acpic Theater, where she's given music a real role.
Yeah, that's extraordinary. And something that always takes my breath away every time I experience it, either as an audience member or as a performer, is like when the audience is just collectively completely silent and they're just taking it in and what they just experienced visually and orally and emotionally. And yeah, that's one of the best things in life as a performer, and the power that art has.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I agree.
Just go from the top again.
Nothing soft grows in desert sand. Smoke is short, fast needles. Valleys shine from the mountain lobes, and their long, long shadows. In the spring of 17, when the rains flooded the freeway, all the green on the desert hills felt like long forgotten memories. They wait, they wait, they wait, as I waited for you in the storm and in the drought. Darling, I'll be true. We traded off at the wheel, and the wind introduced us to the time of the desert sands and the patience of the cactus. They wait, they wait, they wait, as I waited for you in the storm and in the drought. Darling, I'll be true. They wait, they wait, they wait, as I waited for you in the storm and in the drought. Darling, I'll be true.
How do you feel about that?
Good.
So when folks listen to you and interact with your music, whether that be in a live performance or at home in the intimacy of their space, listening to your albums, what do you hope that they hear and take away from it?
That's a great question. Let me think. When people are listening to my music, and I would say it's because it's the thing that's come out the most recently in my latest album, Hard Light, I hope they're hearing a curiosity and a confidence now but also a real embrace of both the joy of all the beautiful things in life and an embrace of the hardness or the sorrow or the awkwardness of the life that can sometimes happen in the same moment. I hope that realness or that connection to, say, the everyday is what they hear.
That sounds like beautiful vulnerability and authenticity to me.
I wouldn't argue with that at all, but I would also couch it in the fact that we've put these feelings in like real bangers, like real groovy tunes and sounds that are from kind of these old synthesizers or a big harmony moment. And like, I'm not a professionally trained singer at all. Like, I've sung in choirs a ton. So I have this weird kind of neutral sounding voice that I would consider most of the time. And it's taken me a long time to stop trying when I sing and just let it be there. So if people are kind of hearing this voice on the album, that is kind of one of the main through sounds of it, this kind of thread that goes through it, my voice and also Mark's voice. Those for me have an authenticity that I've worked hard to stop working so hard at getting.
Yes, yes. and to just let it be and be yourself. That's what we're all striving to be.
Yeah, exactly. And that moment of just being real and being there and being as clear as I can.
Yeah.
That's what we were aiming for in the midst of all this like real cool beauty and sound and grit and groove and sometimes unexpectedness.
I'm really excited to dive into the album and to hear your upcoming commissions and actually make a trek up north to see some of your work live and in action. Just such a wonderful conversation, and that's a beautiful place to leave it and wrap it up. Thank you so much, Carmen, for being on Musing today and for this wonderful conversation.
Thank you so much.
Pretty showed me the way it looked in the night. Under the lights, under the lights. Took it home, a memory of that pretty. It was harder, what you showed me, the truth of the words, weighing me down, weighing me down. Can't unknow the things you showed me.
This has been Musing on CJSW 90.9 FM in Calgary. I'm your host, Janna Sailor. Thank you so much for joining me for this celebration of music, creators, and ideas. Musing is a production of CMC Prairie Region and is heard right here in Calgary and around the world via the magic of the internet that connects us. As we end our time together, I want to acknowledge that there are more than 630 First Nations communities across the lands that we now know of as Canada, representing 50 distinct nations and Indigenous languages. In addition, there are Métis in every province of the country and 53 Inuit communities speaking different dialects of Inuktitut across the north. We acknowledge them as the original music makers, dancers, creators, and caretakers of our lands, and they continue to inspire and teach us as we commit to learning and moving forward together. I'm going to leave you now with more music by the extraordinary Carmen Braden. Until next time, thanks for tuning in, and thanks for supporting Canadian music and artists in your community.
'Cause I wanted to lose it. Red to the tips, fingers and ears, cheekbones, I saw your tattoo. In my mind's eye, I knew it was there. It made me want you more. Only one set of tracks could follow them home. Walk backwards to hide the fact that I didn't quite know anymore. Which way